everyone, it's Amber. This episode is about intimacy and relationships, so it is meant for mature audiences. If you want to listen to it with your teens, I recommend that you listen to it first. If this topic isn't for you, that's okay. I will catch you next time. Okay, on to the show. I'm Amber Tresca, and this is About IBD. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis as a teen and had J-pouch surgery 10 years later. Now, I help people with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis understand their disease and feel seen. On About IBD, you'll get real talk on symptoms, treatment, and life with IBD, straight from patients, caregivers, and experts. You'll learn, feel less alone, and even have a laugh along the way. Dr. Stacy Friedman is a clinical sexologist, certified sex and intimacy coach, and the unapologetically bold host of the Purple Passion Project. With 26 plus years in the medical field and 20 plus years working in the sexuality field, Dr. Stacy helps people break down taboos, communicate clearly, and build hotter, healthier intimacy without shame. She works with all aspects of sexuality, but specializes in mismatched sex drives, alternative lifestyles, women who experience painful sex, low libido, and the LGBTQ community. Known for blending expertise with humor and heart, Dr. Stacy makes conversations about sex feel safe, real, and seriously empowering. Her motto is, "My passion is to help you create yours." Dr. Stacy, welcome to About IBD.
Thank you. And I'm really not that funny, even though I do add some humor. I appreciate you having me on a very important subject that many people need to hear about. So thank you.
I agree so much. And I do think you're very funny. At least the two of us have laughed quite a bit already. So, and I don't know. This is the topic. Our topic today is intimacy and IBD, as listeners might have already guessed. And this includes how our symptoms affect our mental health and our relationship with our sexual partners. And it is both a laughing matter and a not laughing matter at the same time. So, but we are going to talk about all of these different things because Dr. Stacy is an expert. And we connected on Threads. First off, anyone who's not on Threads, highly recommend. It's a really unique space. And we connected because I was looking for other podcasters, as I always am. And you said, hey, guess what? I also live with ulcerative colitis. And so I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about that.
Joy, joy. So yeah. And to think, I thought we were going to talk about the juicy stuff, but no.
I know.
But seriously though, I had gotten diagnosed with UC in, I was probably 15, 16 years old. And I'm 54 right now. So I've been living with it for a very, very long time. And I know that a lot of intimacy issues came up, a lot of personal relationship issues, dating issues. I mean, it affects every single aspect of your life. But I have dealt with a lot of embarrassing moments, a lot of situations, dating people, a lot of people not understanding. And it's been a struggle. But once I started getting into the field of intimacy and sexuality, I realized that there's so many medical issues that affect sex and relationships. And this is just one that I can say, yes, I've been there, done that. I understand. And how can I help you?
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I've talked about before on this podcast and with other folks is that, yeah, like you said, and I say that all the time too, IBD affects every single aspect of our lives and maybe some more than others. I think sex and intimacy is maybe a little outsized because let me see if I get this right. The waste factory is next to the funhouse. So it's
that would be right. Waste factory. I'm thinking of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory now. You know, you got me the wrong place, wrong
The
time.
wrong place, chocolate. Yeah. No, but because those things are, close to they're close together. And so it's just natural that they affect one another.
Right.
You are a sex and intimacy coach.
Right.
And I knew your profession existed. Okay. But that's about as far as it goes. So I'm thinking about like, how do you answer the question when you go to like a party or something and somebody asks you, what do you do and how did you get into your profession? Like, how do you answer that question?
Well, it's funny because I usually don't bring it up right away unless I'm with my husband and he's just like, guess what my wife does? It's like, okay, give him a second to actually know who I am before I scare the crap out of them,
Right.
Because it is definitely a taboo subject. And when people find out what I do, the first thing is they go, wait, what? What did you say?
Yeah.
So I don't do therapy, which is a little bit more of the mental aspect. The coaching is more of the sexual health, sexual skill building, connection, actual activities, that type of thing, where you're kind of moving forward versus trying to process through, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. And I just tell people right away, I just help individuals and couples have better intimacy, hotter sex, and help them with any type of issues or concerns that they have. Because I work with people that are individuals as well as a couple. So you don't have to be, in a relationship to get support. And I just start talking. And the next thing I know, everybody has told me their entire life story about sex and intimacy up into the, what did you call the backside? The factory, the back factory,
the waste factory.
Yeah, the waste factory, the fun factory. I hear everything about everything as soon as people know what I do. So they just word vomit everything. But it's great
Right.
because that's one of the things that I think makes me as good as I am with my job or my career is that I'm relatable and people feel very comfortable sharing everything with me.
It is a blessing and a curse, right? Because it makes you good at your job,
right.
but it also means that every time you go to a party, there's probably somebody that is looking for some pro bono
Oh,
advice.
everybody. What are you talking about? But you know what? The hard part is that I love what I do and I love talking about what I do and the subject matter. So I'm kind of like, everyone's like, oh, well, I don't want to have to. I'm like, no, talk to me. Let's go. Come on. Like, I want to hear the information.
So, as we have already just briefly said, people with IBD may be struggling in their intimate lives. I know you're not a stranger to that. I'm not a stranger to that. And we can't cover everything, but I think there's a few common things that we can go over and get people to a place to start thinking about this and also to understand that there's help available. I think that's one of the biggest things I want to impart today. So the first thing is body image, because people with IBD, it's a huge thing. There's a lot of research on it. People with IBD are often dissatisfied with their bodies for just so many reasons. And so I'm wondering, in your experience, how does a poor body image affect your intimate life?
I mean, just in general, bad body image is huge. And then to add some of these things, whether you have a bag or not, there's still that worry. I mean, your body stops feeling like a source of pleasure, and it's like almost like a liability. Like, what's going to happen next? What if I add something to this? People will start like sucking in their stomach because the bloating makes them feel crappy and kind of gets them out of that arousal process. Maybe avoiding certain positions because you're afraid, oh, I might, fart, or I might feel like I have to poo, or, how their body might look at a certain angle, or if they have a bag, how's it going to look? How's it going to smell? But if all these kind of questions, keep the lights off, keep the lights on. It definitely takes a hit for many people. And so, especially also if you're having pain too, people just get disconnected from their body. So one of the things that I help with is just kind of getting people in tune with their body without the focus of all the other junk that kind of comes around, and focusing on the pleasure aspect. we don't focus on pleasure. We're just focused on what our body's doing or not doing.
Right. And that makes sense. That makes sense. And then, as you were saying, there's so much fear and worry. Fear of embarrassment over
Oh, yeah.
something like, you're super bloated. I have a J pouch due to ulcerative colitis. So, the control is not the same
Right.
as it is for somebody who does not have these issues. So there's embarrassment there. There's fear of being rejected,
Yeah.
and it comes up with dating. But I also hear people talking about it with their long-term partners. And so I'm wondering how can this fear affect your relationship? I think either whether you express it or not, it can affect your
Oh,
relationship.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't just stop sex, it stops honesty, because the more afraid that you are, the less you're able to just be open and say, okay, my stomach is feeling this way, or I feel like I have to poo, or we have to stop what we're doing because of this or for that. A lot of times I remember when I was going through, because whenever stress hit me, that's when I would have all my relapses, obviously. And I went through a divorce and had to go through dating again. And, when you just meet someone, you don't want to say, oh God, I just had diarrhea, I have to go change my pants. Then they're like, oh, what the hell? It is. I mean, it's tricky, but you have to just say, listen, if I am going out dating, first of all, the dating aspect, I want to be with someone who's going to appreciate me no matter what. And so you want to obviously try to do your best where maybe you don't eat as certain foods that might be risky, or maybe if the bathroom is unfamiliar at a certain place, you may not want to sleep over or things like that. But I always told, like with my husband now, I said to him, I said, right away, the first time I met him, I said, if you can't be with a woman who farts or has belly issues, I am not the woman for you. Okay. And a lot of people get turned off by that. But I knew I wanted someone who was going to appreciate me for me. And that long-term relationships, I've been with my husband for 13 and a half years. And, you know, I will say to him, my stomach is bothering me because I ate the wrong food, or I can't have sex right now because if you touch my stomach, I'm afraid of what's going to happen. You have to be open to sharing. And that doesn't mean intimacy has to stop. You can still kiss, make out, touch.
Well, yeah. And that's a really salient point, is that we're using this word intimacy. And for anyone that's listening and not watching, I'm doing the air quotes. And we do that because I made a decision in the beginning of my podcasting journey that I wanted the content to be available to everyone. Although for this episode, I would recommend maybe listening before you let anybody, younger listen to it. But the point being that when we're talking about intimacy, it doesn't just mean sex. Yeah. Yes. It doesn't just mean P and V. Like, correct. That's what people think when you say, correct. Like, there's so much more.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so there's been many times where when right away people might be like, no, I'm not in the mood. Well, are you not in the mood because your stomach is bothering you, you're feeling bloated and that kind of stuff? Or are you not in the mood because you're truly just not in the mood for sex, but you're okay to be in the mood for hugging, kissing, touching? And that's where that whole issue is, because especially in long-term relationships, a lot of people will feel guilty for maybe needing to pause or needing to change their plans or whatever it is. And that sometimes leads to silence instead of communication. And they're afraid of that embarrassment. And that's when you have to say, listen, I'm just not feeling that great, but I still want to connect. How about we give each other a massage, or I give you a massage, or maybe we take a shower and I can help take care of you, or something like that. You can still be intimate.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
That's an important message.
Yeah, there's more ways to be close and to be intimate than I think we tend to think about. And again, I think popular culture might have a lot to do with that, you know. And I will say, like, my husband and I have been married 20. I have to think for a second.
Get it right. Get
it right. I've been married 25 years, and so we actually have shorthand, or code, so that, I don't have to actually say certain words. Like, we've worked it out. When I say this, this is what this means,
Right. Right.
and like that has really worked out for us,
It's
I think.
communication. It's really just understanding that, listen, if it was anything else, if it was diabetes, if it was a heart issue, if you're like, okay, my heart's really pounding because I have heart issue, your partner be like, okay, we don't want you having a heart attack, but you want to talk about, you start talking about bowel, everyone gets ashamed or embarrassed, and there's
Yeah.
nothing to be ashamed about. And there's a lot of people that don't like to talk about bowel movements because it's ewy or whatever. But when you're talking about long-term relationships, you have to have those conversations. But even dating, you need to be able to say, listen, I do have this issue. Sometimes it does affect this, or this. Are you open to someone that might have an issue? Oh God, I don't want to deal with that. Okay, bye-bye.
Total deal breaker,
Yeah,
which can be very sad, and upsetting. But I think it also makes the case for having this kind of open communication
absolutely.
earlier in your relationship versus later.
Yeah. Yeah. That way you know what you're getting into. And that way you don't have to worry about it later on where, oh, I didn't know about this. I mean, I had a very good first marriage. But there was a lot of things. I remember when my stomach was in a bad place and I had to do something, my partner would like look at me and be like, oh God, you have to do that here. I'm like, okay, sometimes I can't make it to a bathroom.
Don't have a choice.
Don't shame me for my medical disease. you know
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. And, I think about like back on like certain boyfriends that I had. I'll never forget when I was in college and I was working with somebody and she looked at me and she says, "So this guy you're dating right now, is he Mr. Right Now or is he Mr. Forever?" And it was so funny because I was like, I don't know, 19, 20 years old. I was like, I wasn't even thinking
right.
about that. And then it probably only took me a minute, but I was like, yeah, he's Mr. Right Now. Because I knew
Right.
my future might include very serious medical decisions
Issues.
and problems, which it did. And I knew he wasn't going to be there for that.
Yeah.
Was sad, but
But you
it
know what?
worked
It,
out
it
well.
might have been sad, but you opened the door to something that was meant to be and will be there for your future.
100%, and that brings me around to trust because that was one of the things that I realized in certain dating relationships that I didn't have.
Right.
And so I wasn't communicating because I didn't have that trust. So how can people with IBD think about trust and make sure that they're dating somebody that they can trust and that is emotionally safe for them?
And that's a difficult thing, especially if you're just dating. You don't know necessarily if you can trust the person or how the person is going to be. But what that person needs to know, that safe partner needs to not have you be predictable. Because if, in other words, for them to be there to support you, they need to know that sometimes if you're out at Disney World or you're in a mall, you might have to stop what you're doing at that second, at that moment, and do something else. And they need to be okay with the unpredictability, period. They can't get mad at you if every time you go into it. Because I know with me, every time I go into a store, for some reason, I go into a store, I have to take a poop. I just have to go to the bathroom. It's like, I think it was like some PTSD from when I was younger and I would have accidents at
Mm.
stores. But every time I go into a store, so my husband is just kind of like, you have to go in again. And he kind of makes a joke about it. But you have to make sure that that person knows that you may be unpredictable and maybe they can give you like little micro moments of trustworthy kind of statements. Like, let's say, what would feel good tonight for you? If you're going out to dinner, my husband knows I can't walk for 20 minutes on a beach right after dinner because if I walk directly after dinner, I'm not going to make it. I have to make sure I'm near a bathroom. I need to rest my stomach, let it digest. So those little things like, asking those questions, someone who won't take it personally, that doesn't joke or minimize it, and that's just someone that listens to try to want to make it better. What can I do for you?
I love that. And you boiled it down so succinctly that a partner needs to be willing to embrace unpredictability.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I just gave myself goosebumps.
I have them as well. Yes. Up next, some advice on when you should talk to a dating partner about your IBD or your ostomy. Dr. Stacy, so we all have to decide for ourselves when is a good time to talk to a dating partner or an intimate partner about living with IBD, about symptoms, about things like maybe having a ileostomy, something like that. Do you have any advice for people about how they can open up that conversation or when they should open up that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a conversation that is nerve-wracking to have when you just go out with someone. But because it is something so personal, it's like, do you tell someone you first meet on day one that you have herpes or something like that? You don't have to share something like that on day one. I think that, first of all, you want to know, is this person potentially going to be someone in my life? I don't feel that there's anything wrong with sharing, yeah, I have, ulcerative colitis, I have Crohn's or whatever. But if you know that you're going to be intimate, I definitely recommend doing it or sharing it before intimacy. So that way you know where that person stands. But, just asking, just say, listen, I told you earlier that this is what I have. And would you be comfortable or not with someone that has, a procedure, that has a bag? And one thing to preface it by is that if you go online, there's so many places that sell decorative things, to a bag cover or a strap around the stomach or whatever it is, so that way it's hidden if you're uncomfortable. It could be decorative, you may not even notice it. I could wear a thing around my stomach, so it makes them a little more comfortable with it. But I think that conversation should happen at least after the first few dates, so that way that that person's going to be worthwhile sticking around with.
Yeah, for sure. And I only had, because I had 2 step J pouch surgery, so I only had an ileostomy for 3 months. It was just such a short amount of time.
Right.
But I'll tell you, lingerie was my friend.
Yeah.
Like I found some. There wasn't. It was 1999, so it was, there wasn't
There's
anything
so many
online.
crotchless underwears. Come on.
I was going to say that was, that was what I went for,
Right.
and that wasn't something that I had previously. But then I was like, oh, okay, now I see the utility of this, and and it was fine. And I don't even remember having any problems during that time. So,
Right.
but it was a short amount of time. But another story, I had a gal on this show, and she told the story on this show, so I can relate it again now and then put a link to it. She has an ileostomy due to ulcerative colitis, and she was dating somebody.
And replied to one of my stories over something. We started talking again, and then we ended up going out on a date. And that first date, because I wasn't sure how much medical kind of history I wanted to share, I did let him know that I had had surgery and I was super sick a couple months prior, and I was still kind of, recovering, gaining weight, that sort of thing, but didn't really allude at all to the ostomy or the stoma itself, just because I, kind of wanted to see how he was as a person. We continued hanging out. We went on multiple dates and stuff. And then I still never said anything. And it came along where it was, we were about to become intimate. And I didn't want to just randomly pause and explain. So I didn't. I just went for it. And then he's like, hand went in on my stomach, and obviously it's there. And he's like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh, it's just because of my surgery. It's just from my surgery. And he was like, oh, okay. Can you take it off? And I was like, no, it has to stay on at all times. I cannot
You want it on.
Yeah. So then he's just like, okay. So I remember a few weeks later, I got a text from him, and he was like, is the thing on your stomach an ostomy? And in my head, I was like, oh no, I should have just told him. But anyways, I replied, I was like, yeah, it is. And then he was like, why didn't you just tell me? And I was like, honestly, I don't know, but now you know. And that was that. And yeah, anyways, so we started dating. It's never been a thing at all. He is super like supportive and proud of all the things that I've been doing like for the community.
And she was like, yeah, I don't recommend that. It worked out fine. But she was like, yeah, I don't recommend that. Maybe I should have told him beforehand. So
yeah, because
anyway,
you can't control how someone's going to react in the heat of the moment like that. Just say, what the is that? Yeah.
turns out
No, that's
he
where
is a keeper.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. No, that's great. But yeah, those conversations are important because you want to be with someone you know that you can trust so that way it doesn't ruin your intimacy.
So Dr. Stacy, you're clear. You already were very clear about the idea that you're a sex coach, not a sex therapist.
Right.
And I think that's a super important distinction when people are thinking about what they need and they're looking for help. So can you dig into that a little bit more and let me know what the difference is between those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a degree in coaching and I have a doctorate in human sexuality. And I help people figure out how to get from where they are now to where they want to be. Like a soccer coach, you know how to play ball, you know how to play soccer, but you need the skills to work together as a team to get the ball in the goal, to figure out how to kick the ball. So it's basically that kind of thing is what a coach is doing. So I'm coaching people how to, for example, to relate it to what we're talking about, learning how to talk about bowel symptoms and sex without killing the mood, learning how to rebuild confidence about intimacy after maybe issues that you have after surgery, or just exploring pleasure that doesn't rely on the penetration or performance, where the therapy is a little bit more about processing the trauma you dealt with when you found out you had the disorder or disease, or working through that deep rooted shame that you have because of you being made fun of and all this kind of stuff. So that's kind of the difference between the therapy aspect. And I like to give lots of fun tools and tips and tricks for people to move forward and how to navigate the dating and all that kind of stuff that empowers people. So that's like it's about helping people live and love right now and not just someday.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm also wondering too, though, like what are some situations that are best suited for sex coaching? Like, what are some of the issues that you help your clients through?
Well, obviously, some of my specialties, like you mentioned earlier in the bio, is the mismatched sex drives. It's not just mismatched sex drives, it's also sex timing. Because you might have the exact same drive, but the timing doesn't work. The timing is mismatched. So I help couples that are kind of stuck in that, if I do this, then they pull away. But then when they do this, they pull away, that mismatched kind of situation. Maybe a woman who hasn't felt sexual in years because her body's been feeling bad with medical issues or pelvic pain or painful sex or just shame, things like that after flare-ups, for example. People that, dating, I do the dating coaching. So people who are terrified to date because they don't know how or when to disclose that they have some type of a disorder or disease, and just people that want intimacy back, that just want it to look different than it looks now. Basically, just rewriting the intimacy there so their body's not the enemy.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that there's probably a lot of people with IBD who are hearing themselves in those types of situations, and knowing that help is available is really great. But I think there's that initial barrier that we all need to get through, in that talking about sex is difficult, talking about IBD is difficult. And so for the person who's like, yeah, okay, I have one of these situations. Okay, there is a person that can help me or us with that. How can they get started?
Well, I think first is knowing that you don't need a perfect plan. Okay. I mean, it starts just from a starting point. You just have to start. And a lot of people just don't know where to start. And I say, call me. I say, call me. I do offer 15-minute consults that are complimentary, so we can talk to see what it's all about. But I think talking to their partner is one of the most important things, because we're lacking so much of that, communication, and just being honest and just saying, I want intimacy, or I want to be closer or change. I'm just scared, or I'm not really sure how to present it to you. And just having someone that normalizes the experience instead of pathologizing it, because we are not our disease or disorder, and we need to know that talking to a professional can help, talking to your partner, giving yourself permission to explore connection without that performance, because we are such a performance-based society, and we forget that sex and intimacy and connection is all about pleasure. And if we
Yeah, that's totally true.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we could just get rid of that mindset, people could open up just saying, okay, well, yeah, okay, I have these issues, but I can do other things.
Yeah. It doesn't have to look what like somebody else's relationship, or what you've seen, and we don't actually talk about these things. I mean, maybe sometimes like with your girlfriends or whatever, right?
Right.
But that's about it. So when it comes to like the spectrum of normal or typical, like
Right.
I feel like we don't even know what that is, because we don't ever talk about it.
Right. And we're so stuck with the relationship that we're having with our body and what the body is not doing for us. And we're just so focused on that.
Mm,
But that doesn't disqualify you for, allowing yourself that pleasure or desire or connection. It's just asking for a different type of intimacy. And that's kind of what we have to change our mindset for, and just say, how do we work with what we have? And what kind of intimacy can we change it to?
well, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And so, all right, you offer like 15-minute sessions, and then I'm assuming you have a spectrum of other offerings that you have. And so I want to let people know a little bit about what that looks like take away some of the mystery. So can you tell me what that is like when you start with a new client or someone or a prospective client?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, the 15-minute consult just kind of figures out what you're looking for, what you need. I do have a couple of packages that actually offer a transformation, because we're not, if someone needs one session just to ask like Q&A and things like that, I can do that. But
Mm,
most people come to me for transformation. They want change. They want results. You're not going to get a result in one or two sessions, because we have to
yeah.
really get into what do you need, especially if you're in a relationship, because it's not just there's three situations. It's you, your partner, and then the relationship. So it takes a little bit longer. So depending on what your needs are, we have two packages. And then after that, if you still need extra support, then there's like the single packet, the single sessions. So it really just depends on what you're looking for help with. But each session, we always like to leave with some type of an action plan, something that you can do, something you can bring home and work on. And that way you actually see progress. And that's the
Hmm.
important thing, is seeing that transformation, even if it's something as simple as learning how to communicate better. I've written 15 ebooks, and I just am getting ready to put them out, but I let someone read it to see what their thoughts were. And they literally wrote me today and saying that it transformed their intimacy, because she had had trauma growing up, abuse.
Yeah.
And it helped her. Just something like an ebook was a start to just communicating different with with her relationship. And she said that that changed everything. So sometimes it doesn't take a lot to make
Hmm.
the change.
Yeah. And, to that end, I was actually going to ask you if you had written any books. So thank you for bringing that
Well,
up. Um, and so I want you to tell us also more about the Purple Passion Project. You have a blog. You obviously are available for coaching sessions. How can people engage with you and find these offerings?
Well, first of all, everywhere on the internet, all social media. My website is drstacyfriedman.com. There's no E in my name, but I'm on TikTok. I do lives where I have a lot of Q&A. I also am building an app where I'm going to have a community. So that's something that will be available very soon. I have all of the ebooks. I have another book on Amazon, which everything can be found on my drstacyfriedman.com, including the blog. And the podcast is called The Purple Passion Project. It airs every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's on most of the major streaming platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, things like that. It's all about sex and intimacy. And I have guests. And then starting this new year, I'm actually going to start doing some of my own on just me answering questions, which will be kind of cool.
Oh my gosh. Do you have a platform? Are you accepting questions, or are you going to go through like, an FAQ or something?
I might do a little thing where I send out emails. So if people want to be part of the email list, I offer tons of freebies all the time. They can go to drstacyfriedman.com and there'll be a pop-up that says, do you want to be part of the email list? So I'm going to be going through that and asking people to ask some questions and go through that as well. Because I think that not everybody wants to listen to interviews all the time. And I thought that it's kind of cool to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to do that in my new year.
I love your show because the topics that you cover are real. Like I was listening to the one on pelvic health, and you had I believe she was a pelvic floor therapist.
Yep, absolutely.
Plus, she does like a lot,
She's
other
incredible.
things as well. I mean, and when I tell you, I didn't know about pelvic floor therapy until probably just a few years ago when I had someone on my show who was a pelvic floor therapist.
Okay.
She is the founder of Intimate Rose. And then finally, I got my urologist to refer me to a pelvic floor therapist for me to actually, and life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be life-changing. Absolutely. And like you said, a lot of people don't know about it. And putting it out there is helpful.
That's the thing. And so you don't know what you don't know. And so you don't know that there's help available for these things. And that someone like you has made all of this information so accessible, which I appreciate so much.
Thank you.
And I also love that the idea of podcasts is that nobody will ever know, unless you're on Good Pods, nobody will ever know what you're listening to or watching. So listen to all of it, read all of it, engage with all of it, take in all of the information and see what helps you. And then go from there. So I love that you're making so much available.
No, I appreciate that. And as for you too, because people don't talk about issues that we have enough in relationship to intimacy and sex. So it's important to kind of know that just because you have this doesn't mean you can't have that.
Yeah, 100% for sure. We want everybody to have the best sex available to them. So,
okay.
So, Dr. Stacy, thanks for reaching out to me on Threads. I was a total stranger to you and we connected and you said yes to me pretty much right away. And I really appreciate that. And I love your content. I'm going to be sending people towards it, I think, all of the time, because when people ask me these kinds of questions, I don't know. And so you are the person to answer them. And you're a member of the IBD community as well, which I think it shouldn't be a big deal, but it kind of is. Well, because you understand things at a different level.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why I say a lot of people, I've been through a lot in my life, and a lot of the information that I share is because I've been through it as well, not just education, but personally.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, super listener. Check the show notes to find links and information about the topics discussed in this episode. Plus, get a written transcript and much more on my website, aboutibd.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with someone else or leaving a rating in your podcast app. Reviews and ratings help me grow this show and bring you more great content. Thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, I want you to know more about IBD. About IBD is a production of Mal and Tal Enterprises. It is edited, written, produced, and directed by me, Amber Tresca. Mix and sound design is by Mac Cooney. Theme music is from Cooney Studio.
And that's when I just say, hey, you have some, you want me to, a little bit? I don't mind doing that.
Seriously. There's our outtake. Okay.